So I took a break from VR for over a year, and now it's time to get back into Adobe Substance Modeler. So this video is the first of a few where I'm going to start just playing with the new tools that Substance Modeler has now got. And you can follow along as I get back into sculpting in VR with this incredible tool. So I've dived right into VR, so I'm on, this is an Oculus Rift S. This is very, very old equipment now. I prefer the fit of this to the Oculus, so the Oculus Quest is okay. I love the fact that it's mobile, but I do like the Rift S for comfort. So I probably will upgrade it at some point, but at the moment it does pretty much very well. And this is medium. There you go. How easy is that? So this is Adobe Modeler, and this is the initial screen that you see. So this is the VR mode, and we've got this little cross in the foreground here. So I'm left-handed, as you can see. This is my primary or dominant hand here. This is my secondary hand with tools, and then you've got access to all your tools. So let's just see what's changed and what we can and can't do. So this is still very much in beta, and I haven't looked at the beta for quite some time. So I'm going to hit the tool icon, and I'm going to do what I always do, which is switch on first of all mirror symmetry, and that means that I know I'm working symmetrically. So that's a good start. So flick with the thumb on the non-dominant hand to undo, and then tool again. So I want to, what I generally do is I lower the resolution. So I've got quite a low voxel resolution. That's still not low enough for me, so I'm going to go low. I like it really low and really blocky for the first while. I used to do exactly the same in medium, and just for now I'll use a sphere. And just so that you are aware, if you want to change the shape of these, if you, on your dominant hand, on your main hand, if you want to change the shape, if you just hold this little resize button here, so you can just pull it up and down, in and out, left and right, and you can basically change lots of parameters there. So for the basic sculpting, I just want a normal sphere, or roughly a normal sphere, and I don't need to change the orientation at all. You can change the pointer, or how this pointer is angled, just by holding the trigger on the non-dominant hand. So this pointer here, you can point it at that there, so basically move it in, and when it goes blue like that, you can move that around. So you can move that pointer wherever you want it. I tend to have it on the offhand like that for now. Useful later on to change it around if you want the orientation of your model change. So that's quite useful. And now what I want to do is just block out my first thing, really, my first shape. I'm going to do some kind of a creature. No idea yet what I'm going to do, but see how it's quite staggery. That means for me it's not low enough res to start, or low enough voxel resolution. So I'm going to keep lowering it until it's ultra smooth. I actually think I need that nearer, something like that. There we go. So we're getting smoother now. Just keep going down, and you can increase these again later. But if you have the resolution, the voxel resolution, as low as you can afford while you're doing your block out, that means your smoothing will go really, really well. So smoothing is a case of just holding your trigger on your non-dominant hand and just smooth it down. So that hasn't changed at all. So even lower might be okay. So this is really blocky now. So what I want to do is just block out some rough shapes. So I want a neck, I'm going to want a head, and this could completely change, but this will be a really good start. Just change the orientation of that sphere a little bit. So something dragony would be useful for my first few goes of this. So that's dragony enough for me. I won't even smooth it down just yet. So so I'm using, to control it, to move around the inner grips. So these grips where you see the little hand icons, you can do one hand, or you can do the other hand, and you can, two hands, two grips, you can pull in and out like that. So let's just bash out the shapes. So we want a neck, a chest. Again, the sphere is not quite the shape that I want, so I'm actually going to go back to a pretty standard looking sphere. rough chest, spine will carry on down here, so there'll be a belly in there somewhere. Just smooth it a bit and just make sure it looks good from all angles. If it doesn't and you want to chop a bit away, tap once on the little switch tool, polarity tool, and basically goes red, so you can now chew away and then smooth that down. So you can tap that again, but add basically like so. So it's the lower button on your dominant hand there. Now we're going to want some legs on this, but I'm going to do them on a separate layer in a minute, and I'll do the front limbs on a separate layer here as well, so don't need them. And we will want some kind of a tail, I guess, so we'll leave that something like that, just literally to tell me where I want it, and then I'll smooth that right down. So a big brush, so that's pushing forward with the thumbstick to make the brush bigger, and then smooth it right down. Not bulky enough at the back here, so I'm going to go all the way underneath and we'll pull like that. Now you might notice I'm sitting down. If you're standing up, you can put this in the air in front of you and move around it, so that's quite liberating when you're stood up. You know, I honestly believe that VR sculpting is the best way to block out shapes, the fastest way to block out shapes. It's better and faster than ZBrush Z-spheres. I just find it ultra fast for getting the shapes that I want to start with, and you can just export them out and then use them in your, you know, basically start your process as you do in your other programs, Blender or ZBrush or Nomad or whatever it is you're using. So you're just, it looks like you're adding clay. Now in ZBrush you're really just pulling the surface in and out, because that is just polygon work. You're affecting the surface in and out, but in a voxel grid you're working within an imaginary grid, and you're saying each cube within that grid is either on or off. So you're really just saying, you know, you aren't pulling a surface. So if I pull this through, unlike ZBrush, this is now adding the clay in that voxel grid. So it's very different than a polygonal. So it's certainly different than what we call box modeling, so adding points, edges and vertices, and it's very different than digital sculpting with a polygonal system, so one where it's using surface normals to add the clay on the surface, which is what ZBrush is. You're effectively pulling the surface in and out when you're sculpting on it in ZBrush. So that's given me a kind of like a rough shape to work with. Now what I'm going to do now is add some new layers. So one I want to do first of all is, so I want to add a layer there, and I want to add what's going to be a rock down here, so something like this, and this is what he's going to be stood on, and it's symmetrical there, and I don't want that, so I'm going to come back in, I'm going to turn symmetry off, and I'm going to make this base non-symmetrical like that, like so. Now again, too high res, so down, really low resolution, and then we're going to go to cube and use it to smash off some of these surfaces. So I'm just using it to chew away, and this will change. So you know, I'm not saying this is going to look anything like this when it's finished, but it's at least giving me the volumes that I want to start with a little bit. Now there are stamps in here, so if you come in here and look at stamps, and then you look at what you've actually got, so you've got basics here, you've got home folder here with rocks in it. So what you can do is use these rocks just by default. You can make your own, but this is a quick way of doing it. And then what you want to do then is you can do single, so you can just tap down single rocks like so. Now you see how soft and horrible that is? That's because we're too low on here. So go up with the resolution. So if you remember I said I go low, that's when I'm sculpting. If I'm just adding stuff on like this or removing it, then it's better to have it higher resolution. So just remember that, you know, and you again, you can switch in between it, so not really a problem. So I'm going to come all the way up here like so, and then chew this away, and then add down here, and I might pull this around a bit, so I'm going to go a bit lower. And you could change the rock again now, go for something else down at the base here. What you don't want is to see any repeats. So I'm moving it around and just using the single to tap down. Too much there, so I might try and reduce some of it like so, and add a bit more. And we might flatten that base in a minute. We might just go for, might just use something like a, let's just switch back to our primitives, cube, and then just go smash off the bottom, something like that. And we can, we can clean that up later on. That's, it's really not an issue, and we can level it off. Let's get rid of that. Maybe some of these at the front. So I'm just chipping. I always like with rocks, I always like some, you really nice flat areas if you can get them. I'm still on single, don't forget, so it's just doing single hits. So you can change that again in a minute, but that's enough for now. So let's just go back and basically thumbstick, non-dominant hand, push it forward and tap on the thing you want to work on. So we're back onto the base body of the dragon. So we can now go back to symmetry and we'll do the legs, but then we'll split them and we'll move them. Maybe just, I will use another tool first of all. So I'm going to use this, which is the warp tool. I'm just going to warp that body a bit. So this is literally one of my favorite tools in 3D, and it hasn't changed from Adobe Medium, or Medium as it used to be called. This is exactly the same tool. You can see here it allows me, just those simple shapes that I've made, just allows me to pull it around. Literally gives me like an elastic effect, so it's like liquefy in Photoshop, or it's like any of the you're basically dragging around geometry here now. So and because it's in the air in front of you, it's probably a little bit better than it is on a desktop. So there you go. I've got the body a little bit better aligned. I might even completely change that tail in a minute. I might bring it more down like this and rebuild it a bit, but at least we've got one and we've got it in place, even though it's not even the right volume. If you just want to add volume, what you can do is use this. It's like a balloon tool, but it basically just inflates like that, so it puts back some volume. So that can be quite useful. I wish we had that tool in other programs as well. We've got it in ZBrush, obviously, and Nomad Sculpt. Right, so let's put some front arms. We'll just put two very basic front arms on it. So we'll go back to, we're on the right, we're on that layer, but we don't want that layer. We want to go and add a new layer, and we want to be on sphere for now, and then low resolution. See how that looks. Whoops, we're still on single there, we don't want that. So these front limbs are going to be wings, so we're going to have to think about our anatomy here now. So if this is our shoulder, and what comes off a shoulder, so first of all you've got your shoulder itself, so this is called your deltoid. Maybe a little bit too low for this one. I'm going to go up one. So you've got your deltoid, which comes onto your humerus here, so this is where your bicep is, and that comes onto your forearm here. And if you're a dragon and you're using mammalian anatomy, then obviously there's going to be a wing membrane at the back here, but this is so far accurate to a to a mammal-like creature. So, and then we probably want the wing, the first part of our hand, sorry, and then the first part of our wing, and then another part of the wing, and the fingers of the hand will then bend round like so. If you're going to do a Game of Thrones dragon, remember they've got 6 digits, which not a lot of people spotted that, but they've actually got, because they've got digits here, they've actually got an extra digit on the wing, which I only noticed last year actually. So I was looking at videos of Drogon, and it really you know, it was really clear that he had this extra digit. Now I'm going to go increase the resolution again, and I'm going to do there's a couple of things you could do. You could cut out a wing shape, but it's easier just to do this, which is just spray the shape that you want in the air, like so, and then I'm just going to fill around it like this, because we're going to smooth it down. So you could make a big fat one and then, you know, kind of, you know, squash it down, but why not just do this, which is just filling it in like so, and then we'll smooth it down. You'll see what I'm doing in a moment. So still see the definition of the wing at the moment. So many different ways to do this, and loads of different modelers will you know, teach you different ways to do this. So mine is not the best way all the time. This is just how I do it. So, you know, take a look at what other people are doing. Let's go up the resolution when I just want to make sure I've got everything filled in, and then I'm going to smooth it right down. Too much there. Don't want to go crazy with it. I can actually increase the resolution again just while I'm smoothing it down, so that will slow down the smoothing operation. So this is one time where that's useful. So you can see what you can smooth so far down that the stuff actually disappears. You can see it disappear in there. Well, that's given us some really nice, the start of some really nice dragon wings. So very, very quick, very, very simple. Now we can use this, which is the warp tool again, and now we can, what I tend to like to do is then bend that around so it looks more like cloth. So be careful not to bend the limbs. You need straight lines where your limbs are, and you're going to do, you know, you are going to do some more detail on them in a moment. And again, we haven't broken the symmetry yet, so just try and pull it back a bit and have a look at what it looks like this. And if that's working, then fine, just go for it. Go back to your sculpting tool. So make sure you're on sculpting. That's this one here, the little ball one, and then we can go back and we can sculpt some more defined muscle work here. So we'll do a bit more of a deltoid here. Come into 3 parts and smooth that down, and then something a bit more detailed in the bicep. So obviously the bicep will be really strong on a dragon were it a real creature, and then you'd see a trace of the tricep at the back here. That smooth brush needs to come down this side, so smooth that down, and then you have quite a strong this is the forearm here coming around here. So these are the ridge muscles there. So if you're on a human, these would be what I call the extensor muscles, and they strap over the top and end here on the inside, which is basically, you've got 2 bones in here, your ulna and your radius, and these muscles that strap round come onto the inside here, which is onto your top end of your radius, which then goes to the hand. So you can see, as much as we're doing a fantasy creature, we're using human or mammalian anatomy, and we're just we're building in as much reality as we can, even while we're sculpting at this base level. So then what we do need is a couple of parts of the digit. So I'll put a finger, there we go, which is a claw actually, and then a bit of bone detail on where the hand is as it curls round and becomes these finger bones that are basically the spines of the wing. And then a bit more, oops, I'm gonna just undo that. So I'm just using the undo button. I don't want too much detail going onto these here. Now what you can do is this is still this is still basically adding clay what you can do is you can just work on the surface if you want, which I'm not going to do here, but there's another tool down here, this one, which is called the build up tool. So you could just build up along the surface like this. You have to have a high strength setting, like so, like something like this. Now this is better with like one of the lazy mouse features, but personally I don't like that. I only do that when I'm doing details, so I generally stick with this clay tool. So at least that's what I used to do. You know, bear in mind I'm away from this for quite a while, so I'm finding new ways to do stuff on this, and there may well be people who are, you know, can teach you something very, very different than this. If there's, you know, there might be new tools that I'm not yet aware of, but obviously over this next week or so I'll get them back and I'll find out, you know, which are the preferred ones. So that's looking okay. So we've got some wings. Now we'll just basically we'll go and make a new layer, and we'll go in and we'll put in some back legs. So there's no symmetry on there, so let's go back to our symmetry, put symmetry back on. It's moved offline actually there, so we don't want that, so it's completely out of line, so maybe we need to move that round. So if I remember how to do this, new layer, there we go. So we're back in line now, just made a new layer again. And now the thigh, like so, and then coming down to the back of the calf, or correct name for that, gastronemox. Never know if I'm saying that right. And then back of the heel here onto the foot, and then the foot's obviously, the other foot is buried into the rock, so don't worry about that for now because we're going to change that with this symmetry. And then I'm going to have 3 claws. We're just going to work on this one side. Let's make that a little bit more. So what we'll do is we'll split these and then we'll pose the other one. So back under the thigh. Might put a bit more muscles going into the back of the tail there, which is very much like a dinosaur here. So if you want to add that musculature in, so what you want is this keel part underneath, and then these big, it's called the chordo femoralis on a dinosaur. These big muscles are strapped down, basically help you can swing your tail. So you know, a dinosaur would have, you know, those, you know, a similar sort of anatomy. A dragon, sorry, would have this a similar sort of anatomy in my mind to any large, you know, a large theropod as they call it, so a T-Rex or a Carnotaurus or something like that. So I'm taking it from real world examples again, and that's probably going to give us enough there. We might need to just go forward on thumbstick and pick on the leg, and then we'll use the warp tool again. Just pull that thigh out a bit, maybe move that around like so, just to give us a bit of a more open spread. And then when we split this, what we'll do is we'll basically use we'll pose this other leg. In fact, let's just do it now. Let's just duplicate this and then split it. So what we'll do is we'll duplicate this entire leg, and then we'll use an erase. So back onto the clay, and then we'll just erase one of these. So turn off the symmetry, and I know there's better ways of doing this, but this is what I'm faced with. Go back onto this leg, and we'll delete off symmetry on this one, and we'll delete that here as well. So now we've got two legs, one, so I can basically click on each leg. So if I want this one, I can now move this one independently, so they're not now symmetrical anymore. So if I want to bring this round and then pose it, that's how I would do it. So I get the basic anatomy right, and then I would go and do this that I'm doing now. So I might just go, let's bring that leg round to the side as if it's hooking on there like that. And then if you use your, make sure you're on the right layer and go to the warp tool, and then you can warp that piece around. So we want to just basically turn that in like so. And that's still good anatomy, so it's good enough for us to sculpt on. We're going to join it back together, I think, in a minute. But now you can see we've got a nice creeping look to it, just with that twist of the leg as well. So that works really well for me already. So that's the entire body laid out already. So that's a great start. You know, there's lots to do, but what we've got is we've got one of everything. The volumes might not be right, but we've got something that looks pretty much perspective wise, and length of body and form, etc. is almost where we would want it to be. We're not going to want many changes from that. So you could, in theory, just export that now, and you could then take that out, use that in ZBrush or Nomad or whatever, and you've done that in such a limited amount of time. It's, you know, it's so powerful. But let's do another pass now. So let's do, if that was the primary forms or block out, let's go and do a tertiary or secondary form. So let's have a bit of a play around with this. So what I will do is I'm going to take my headset off first, and I'm going to save it. So you won't see me do this, but you can't do this inside VR, but it would be good to save it at this point. I hope you liked the video, and if you do, please give it a thumbs up, as it does help us to get in front of other people who like this kind of VR content. And if you liked it enough to give it a thumbs up, then why not subscribe to the channel, and I can let you know when we upload new videos, which is every week.